Hello, everybody. In this video, I want to talk about the last element of fiction that we will talk about. And in fact, this will be an element of all literature, and that is theme. Every piece of literature will have a theme, and fiction is no different. So, fiction has themes. So, let's talk about what a theme is. So get out your journal or something to write with and to write on, and let's consider the following story. Now, this is in fact a fable by Aesop. You've probably heard of Aesop's fables. So, a hungry wolf was lurking near a flock of sheep, but the vigilant shepherd gave him no opportunity to satisfy his appetite. One day, the wolf came across a discarded sheepskin. He clothed himself in the skin and was able to hide among the sheep. This disguise fooled the shepherd completely, and that night the wolf was herded into the fold with the sheep. However, this happened to be the night that the shepherd chose one of the sheep to feed his hungry family. Reaching into the pen, the shepherd randomly picked out the disguised wolf and cut his throat. So, what is this story about? Let's list some one word answers to this question, and let's not be literal and say it's about sheep or it's about wolves or it's about a shepherd. Let's focus on some concepts. What are some possible concepts that this story is about? So, for example, you might list that this is about hunger because the wolf was hungry, right? So take a few moments to list some one word subjects of the story. These are called subjects of the story. So hunger would be one of them that I would think about. All right, so some others might be diligence, disguise, survival, irony. It's ironic that the wolf was trying to get a meal, but then he became the meal. Hunger, as I said before. Deception, the wolf was trying to deceive the shepherd. As I said before, these words are all subjects of the story. Now let's choose one of the subjects to focus on. How about deception? All right, what we want to do now is we want to think about what the story says about deception. So let's answer a second question. What does the story say about deception? There can be several different answers to this question. How, and I will tell you what my answer is in just a moment, but tell me, what do you think this story says about deception? All right. I think this story says that deception leads to vulnerability. If the wolf was not attempting to deceive the shepherd with his disguise, he wouldn't have been the one of the possible choices for the shepherd's supper. So when you deceive someone, that leads to you open yourself to being vulnerable in ways that if you're not trying to deceive, you're not vulnerable. This is a theme of the story. And stories can have many, many themes related to many, many subjects. But when you're trying to think about the theme of a story, what I want you to do is I want you to go through this process. First, list several different subjects of the story, and then pick a subject or pick a few subjects and think about what the story says about that subject. And then you will arrive at a theme. So Daniel and Saphir state the theme of a work of fiction is its controlling idea, the central insight the story gives us about human life. You might have called this a message, maybe. What is the message of the story? They go on to say a theme is not necessarily an idea that a writer consciously decides to focus on before beginning a story. Writers do not, as a rule, tell a story in order to illustrate a particular idea. Rather, they try to write truthfully about life, and their particular way of looking at people and events give their stories a central focus. So sometimes the theme of a work is not one that the writer had in mind. Sometimes writers do have themes in mind, but most of the time, as Daniel, excuse me, and Saphir say, writers just try to write truthfully about life. As you investigate works of fiction to determine a possible theme, you can begin by asking the two questions we asked earlier about Aesop's fable, to first determine a subject and then to determine what the author is saying about that subject. So the first thing you're going to do when you try to determine theme is you're going to ask, what is the story about? Then you're going to ask, what does this story say about whatever subject you have chosen? It all seems so simple. However, that first question, what is this story about, can be a difficult question to answer. You shouldn't expect the subject and or theme of a work to jump out at you every time. Some works, in fact, most of them, are complex and take a couple of readings and a lot of thinking to sort out the theme. Here are some other questions that can help you, the reader, determine what a work of fiction is ultimately about. So before we do that, one of the things I wanted to tell you is that we read A Good Man is Hard to Find, and I've read that since I've been in, the first time I read it, I was in college. And I have read that several times and talked about it in several classes. And we even had a discussion about it through our discussion board. And I still am not really sure what the theme of that story is. I'm just, I, it's interesting to me, but I just don't think that I have figured it out just yet. And that's one of the fun things about literature, is that sometimes you can read something over and over and over again and you can see new things, or you can return to the things that you have seen in that story in the past, but you still do not figure it all out, right? That, it's still a mystery. So I'm still working on that one. Um, A Good Man is Hard to Find by Flannery O'Connor. But let's look at some other questions that can help you as a reader determine what a work of fiction is ultimately about. So, what words, images, or scenes are repeated throughout the story? Sometimes these can lead to generalizations, which can in turn lead to possible themes. Who is the main character? What happens to this character? Does he or she undergo a change? Should the reader identify with this character? Does the author explicitly state any generalizations about the human condition? Do any characters make such statements? What are the main conflicts and how are they resolved? Who wins and why? Often, who wins will tell you what ideas the author chooses over other ideas. And that may lead you to the subject of the story and even to the theme. What focus does the title of the story provide? Are there any passages in the story where the title is invoked? These passages are important and can lead to a possible theme. So, as you are constructing statements of theme, here are a few things to keep in mind. A statement of theme is never just one word. It is a subject plus a comment on that subject. Harmon and Holman point out that theme implies a subject and a predicate of some kind, not just vice in general, but some such proposition as vice seems more interesting than virtue, but turns out to be destructive. So deception is not the theme of a work, but deception leads to vulnerability is a theme. So a statement of theme is never just one word. Also, a theme of a work is not a moral. Statements of themes should not begin, people should or you should not. Themes do not teach, they reveal. So a statement of theme would not be, one should not try to escape death. That is a moral. That is a telling you what you should or should not do. Statements of theme don't tell you what you should or should not do. They just reveal a truth about life. So instead of saying that your theme is one should not try to escape death, you might phrase the theme as attempting to escape death can lead one to it more quickly. That doesn't tell me what I should or shouldn't do. It just reveals a truth about life. If I try to escape death, I may very well do the one thing in that trying to escape that causes me to head toward death more quickly. So the second statement there about attempting to escape death can lead one to it more quickly, that doesn't try to teach a lesson, it just simply reveals. So that is a theme. The first statement, you should not try to escape death, that is a moral lesson, that is not a theme. There is no one correct way to state the theme of a work of fiction. Furthermore, literary works can encompass several themes. In fact, no statement of theme that can be backed up with evidence from the work is wrong. Also, a reader doesn't have to agree with the sentiment of a theme to be able to see it in a work. It's perfectly fine to say, I think the author of this work is saying that war is justified in some cases. Notice that's not a moral statement. That's not telling you what you should or should not do. It's just revealing that war is justified in some cases. Now, you can either agree with that theme or not. So you can say, I think that this is the theme, but I don't agree with that theme. And also, a statement of theme should be universal and go beyond the story itself. For example, a theme of The Lion King is not Simba had to go back and help his family. That relates just to The Lion King. That relates just to Simba. But a theme is more universal. So I might say duty is sometimes greater than personal interest. So that relates that to anyone, right? So Simba wanted to stay away, not have to deal with things, but sometimes his duty as the son of the king, or his duty as son of the king, meant that he had to go back and help his family. But when I say it by saying duty is sometimes greater than personal interest, that relates that theme that is found in The Lion King to other stories and to humanity in general. So the second statement certainly applies to The Lion King, but it applies more generally to life as well. So that was a very short presentation today about theme. So as you are reading the stories that we will read this week, and as you think back to the stories we have read, think about theme. And what you might do is you might take each of the stories that we've read and go through this process, thinking of a subject and thinking about what the story says about that subject to discover at least one theme about each of those works. So I hope you found this helpful, and I will see you in the next video.